January 2007, I began serializing it online. It ran on Smith Magazine with new chapters appearing every month until the summer of 2008. AD on Smith was a true multimedia presentation. In addition to the comic itself, there are links embedded in many panels, which lead to further information, videos, sound clips, and other resources. In addition, the site featured an active blog, a message board, and hurricane resources. And all of that's still online. The original version of AD is still available online for free for anyone to read. I felt that was very important for those who couldn't get the book. Though the book is longer and has fleshes out a lot of stuff. AD quickly found an audience online, and the message board comments were overwhelmingly positive. I was especially relieved and touched by the comments from people in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast area who embraced the story of AD and its characters as their own. Because you can imagine, as someone from Brooklyn, New York, who never lived in New Orleans, I was a little bit nervous about what people from there might say about me attempting to portray them. So you should know by now, the events that occur in AD actually happened to all of the characters, and most of the dialogue in the book is taken directly from our conversations, quotes from interviews, or entries from their own blogs. The places and details are real too, which really matter to me. By obsessively recording and documenting, say, the comics and DVDs on Leo's bookshelves, or the contents of Abbas's store, I'm speaking for all the things, from all the people and all the institutions that were lost in the floods. When it came to structuring the story, it was when I had the concept of the prologue, starting the book with a bird's eye view of the hurricane as it builds up in the Gulf of Mexico and then sweeps over the Gulf Coast, that I began to see how to thread all of these disparate stories into one narrative. The main thing for me was to get the details right and the emotions of the characters as they went through their respective ordeal. And after one early incident with Denise, where she questioned whether I was portraying her too simplistically as a stereotypical, quote, angry black bitch, in her words, I made sure to run all my scripts by her before I drew anything for publication. That worked out really well, and she was really helpful in tweaking dialogue and other important issues of verisimilitude. And, I know that maybe your typical journalist doesn't run their stories by their subjects before they publish them, but I wasn't in the business of trying to catch her, in a misrepresentation or, quote her out of context to show her up. I wanted to tell her story. I wanted to translate her story into this form and do it as sensitively as possible. And she never censored a single thing other than just helping me with getting the language right. So we were right in tune with that, and that was true for all the characters in the book. As a writer, as I was structuring the book, I made some rules. I decided that once the prologue was over and the book itself began, that I would always move forward in time. It was up to me to find the character or characters whose true experiences best fit the moment in the timeline that I wanted to convey. And I decided I would never repeat scenarios. For instance, if I showed a scene where one character loses all of their possessions, I didn't want to repeat that scene with another character. I think the point had already been made. From there, it was relatively easy to just let the story spool forward. After all, the stories of the people I had chosen were so compelling and so dramatic, it made my job as a writer much easier. Let me just tell you quickly a little bit about the background and the research work that went into crafting AD. For instance, when it came to portraying Denise's apartment, I was not able to visit the apartment because it had been totally destroyed and gutted by the storm. So based on her description, which we met at a restaurant and I was scrawling on a napkin while we had lunch, I drew up a floor plan of her apartment, and then I plugged the street address into Google Earth and was able to see the shape of the building as a whole. At that point, they didn't actually have Google Street View, which I would have appreciated because I should have a slide of this, but the drawing that I did at the outside of her apartment, which if you remember is a boxing gym on the outside and she lived on the upper floor, it was totally wrong. It was, I was wrong. And when I went back for the 5th anniversary of Katrina, I actually happened to be driving down the street she lived on and saw her actual house, and I wish that I could go back and redraw those few panels, but maybe for the 20th anniversary edition or something. But all that preparation really helped me visualize the scenes that take place in her apartment when the story happens. The subject, Leo, was also really helpful in providing background and photo reference for his personal story, like this heartbreaking photograph of his post-flooded apartment. Reference like this was vital when it came to me drawing scenes like that in AD. And this is really sad to see. Just by chance, Leo happened to take a whole suite of photos of his house right before he evacuated, almost like he knew what was going to happen. And by the way, he's a real comic book nerd. I mean, he's got more movie and comics posters than I've ever seen. But all of this was very helpful, obviously. When you see pictures like this of his little home office, and then what it looked like after the storm, it just really, you extrapolate from that to all the homes and all the places in the city that were flooded. And I did the same thing for Leo's apartment. I did a floor plan of his place. I could get quite obsessive about things like this. But this was all prep work that really helped me get into character when it came to writing the script. And this is from my particular process. I'm very organized. I write a full script, kind of like a screenplay, where I describe each panel and the stage directions and the dialogue and all that. And so this is from a little section when Leo and Michelle are getting ready to evacuate.